Hi guys, welcome back. So today, I don't know what all the hand was waving was about. Today I'm going to use the Tim Holtz Sizzix Halloween embossing folder. I had a piece that was just lying around that I'd already embossed, so I thought I'd use it. I've also got Spellbinders Spooky Greetings Glimmer from a few years ago, and I had been playing around and basically hot foiled a whole bunch of different sentiments, so I just had them handy and already cut out. So that's just a tip if you want, you know, to sort of pre-prep for a few things. And then we have the Breezy Swing die of the month for August 23 from Spellbinders, and this is what it's meant to make. I'm going to put a Halloween twist on it because I can. And so I needed another Halloween card for this year and for the series, so I decided to go with this. So I have a little note card with two white panels. One is going to go on the inside of the card because it's a dark card, it's a black card. And so that's just an easy way if you want to have that darker coloured card base, then just use some white or some cream card on the inside, and I just cut it about 1/4 inch smaller, so just a little bit smaller. I think this is an A2 size card if I'm remembering right, but it's pretty much the same sort of size. I just kind of went with the flow when I was making these cards, so this is what I have. So for this white panel, I'm going to do some inking. I love to ink, you know that. And so what I did was I dragged out my Celery Simon Says Stamp ink and my brushed corduroy distress ink, and I thought I'd try the celery ink, one because it's the right kind of green that I was looking for. I don't have another green that I don't think that is that sort of color. Also it came in one of the card kits. I think it was supposed to be a pear color or something like that, but I got the celery and it's actually a really good green for Halloween. So with the brushed corduroy distress ink, I'm going to use some little I think I'm using the little daubers, the sort of finger daubers. I think that's what I decided to use on these, just to make it easy for me. And so I'm just grabbing one out of the little box. They come in a box of like 40. You can get them pretty much anywhere, and I think I got mine off Amazon. Not expensive, but I think it's a good idea to have a separate box for your distress inks and a separate box for your oxides, because they are totally different inks. So yeah, I would do that. So what I'm doing is very lightly going over the edge or over the top of the embossed piece. Like I say, this was just a panel I happened to emboss, just a white piece of cardstock, and then I chucked it in my like cardstock where I keep all my scraps and stuff. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, and obviously I didn't do anything with it at the time, so it just sort of sat there. It's probably been in there for a few years, to be fair. So I finally dragged it out and thought I've got to use it. So I'm just inking lightly over the top, like I say, even though the background does get inked a bit, and then I went around the edges just to sort of almost like create a bit of a halo in the middle, just for some extra effect, which I thought was quite nice. So you get that sort of almost like it's glowing in the middle, but not really. So very easy to do with any of your embossing folders. So then on the white piece that's just plain, I'm going to use the celery ink, and I'm going to grab one of the little daubers, and I just grabbed one that had a bit of green on it. I will try and wipe off the excess, but I would suggest just labeling your inks and your little daubers as you go, and then just keep them separate. That's just what I would do. I think it's a little easier when you've got the ink blending brushes, but I think anything with foam on it is going to be a little trickier to really get that excess ink off. This one happened to be okay. I think the other ink probably had dried on it because I haven't used them for years. But yeah, this one worked out okay, but just in case. And so with this, I'm just using that little ink dauber. Again, you could use a bigger blending brush or a bigger foam tool, but I just went with the little ones. And just round the edges. I don't need to do the center because the embossed panel is going to sit over the top of that, so you're not going to see that anyway. So just going round the edges, and then round and round again until I was happy with the like the depth of ink or the amount of ink. I don't know if that's the right way to say that, but so I had the right amount of ink on there so it wasn't too pale. You can always build up your ink strength on a piece of cardstock, you can't take it away. So try and go in lightly and then just build it up from there. So once I was happy with that, I then remembered that while I had these things out, the ink out, I actually want to do, I'm making a witch, so she's going to have green skin. That's just what I went with. so I thought the celery ink again was this perfect green color for a witch. So so taking the little parts and pieces that are the body parts for the girl who's on the swing, or in our case our little witch. So I have her 2 legs there, and if I can get the other pieces out, there is a sort of head with shoulders, and then there's a separate head, and all these layers help to, not to quote, not to sound sort of obvious, but they're there to layer up, but they help to give dimension to the different areas. So it's just Spellbinders. It's very clever. So just because they are so tiny and I needed to obviously ink them, I've put some double-sided, this is like a craft, it's called Craft Perfect, it's from Tonic Studios, came in the last kit if you've seen that, and it's actually really good. I've been playing around with it. It's supposed to be a very low tack tape to help hold your dies in place when you want to die cut them, if you need to have them in a specific spot on a piece of cardstock, or you just don't want it to shift. Then I've got to say, some low tack tapes are too low tack. This one actually isn't too bad, and I actually need to do an update on my plates for my Gemini. I did a little video a few weeks ago. I need to do an update on that, and I'll share that with you soon. But I actually found it really quite helpful, and so what I did was I put a piece upside down so that the pieces of cardstock could stick to it, but I also then taped it to my mat, and it sort of worked. I think it would work better if I didn't have these non-stick mats underneath, but it worked. And then I could ink up all the body parts, the rest of the body parts. So the other body parts are the front of her hand and her 2 arms, and you'll see how they kind of go together later on. So for the sentiments, even though they're foiled, you can still ink over the top, which I think I've done videos on this already. You can ink over the top and it's fine. So I just lightly, I didn't even re-ink the dauber for the brushed corduroy. It's my favorite brown for this time of year, and I didn't even re-ink it. I just went straight over the top, but because it kind of looked a bit pale, I wanted a bit more. I wanted more. So you will see in a second. I'm just going to grab the black soot ink dauber, and again, I've not inked it. Again, this is the great thing about some of these inks, like your distress inks. I literally just grabbed it out the box, and it still had enough ink on it just to edge and give a little bit more to those sentiments than I did have. So yeah, it's just, I'll show you the little label. I actually have labeled this one. I haven't labeled all of them, of course. So this one just has a little label, black soot. And if you have your boxes sort of labeled as well, so you know which ones are oxide and which ones are your distress inks or your other inks, then you'll know, you only need to put the name on the color on there. You wouldn't have to say that it's oxide or whatever. So once I'd inked those up, it just kind of helped to bring the whole sentiment, I don't know, it just lifted it a bit more. But then I also took a little, I can't remember if it was a paper towel or something, just to wipe gently over the top of it, just to get the ink that's sitting on top of the foiled areas. And that helps a lot. So I tried to be clever here. And I used some alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, can't say the word, and sprayed over the top, because I thought, well, it's alcohol, it'll evaporate easy, but it'll still give me that sort of distressy kind of look, because any moisture distress ink reacts to, and I believe the Simon Says inks do as well. That did not work, so I went with water, and then my sprayer I think it's just too old now. This sprayer keeps clogging, and so I'll end up with this long stream of water, which I actually landed up and did not realize I sprayed right into my little tin with all my little pieces for the girl. So yeah, I can't even say it was a happy accident. It wasn't. It was just, you know, it just didn't work. So anyway, so I cleaned up as where I thought I'd, you know, sprayed everything within an inch of its life. I got some distress, like texture, if you like, on there, but not a great deal. It's fine. We're just going to go with it. So now to get the next, I want to kind of get the base pieces put together so that I can then start putting her together, and that way I can kind of work from the bottom up, if that makes sense. So I grab some wet adhesive when it will let me, and I will just stick the embossed piece to the front, the card, or the, you know, the card front, or not the card front, but the piece that will go on the card front, and start to sort of assemble that part of it. I won't put the sentiments on yet because I'm going to raise them up on some foam, so I need to know where she is to be able to do that. Something you guys who have been here a long time know that I am not very good with getting straight lines, and I am not very good with lining things up. You'll see that when we do the sentiments, it looks like it's kind of in the middle. It's not. So you'll see that more when we put the sentiments on, but it's fine. It's just, you can see the gap. The gaps aren't the same at the top and the bottom. I'm not going to worry. It's Halloween. It's fine. So what I have here is this is where I realized I actually sprayed her dress, or part of her dress, and the what would you call them? The ropes, I guess, for the swing. So I'm just cleaning those up quickly, but I have some coordinating colors that I thought would work nicely. So I've got like 2 shades of purple and like a rich orange, like a burnt orange maybe, and some black, of course. So the burnt orange is going to be the swing, and then this is where we start to put the dress together. Now when you cut the sort of the lighter purple, which is actually going to be like the underside of her dress, just so you know, if you do have this die set, I knew this and totally wiped out when I cut this out, and did not hold on to the little piece that it does cut as well, which is actually the band for the hat. So I'm going to fix that later, because I thought I'm not running another piece through just for that tiny little band. So I did drag out the back of the like when you get your dies, they usually have, like, for the most part, they have like instructions on how to put parts of it together. So it's really handy when you've not put this together, and you guys know I do this on screen with you, so whatever happens happens. But I was just trying to figure out how this sort of underside or inside of the dress fits on the main dress, if that makes sense. So I was just trying to sort of figure out and sort of look for where lines would meet, so like on the left and the right hand side, where those lines meet up with the bottom piece, with the lighter piece of cardstock, and then I had a rough idea of where they go. Once it comes together, it suddenly comes together, but it's just getting those parts and pieces sort of mostly in the right place, and then they just like work. It's really clever. So that's the underside of her dress and the main part of her dress. Very cute. So this is where I realized when I was putting the hat and the head and that together, that's where I realized I didn't have the band for the hat, but yeah, we'll make it work. So for the head, there's actually a slit in the hair that you can open up once you've put the head, both pieces of the head together. And this will make sense in a second. There's like the face piece and then the head and the shoulders, if that makes sense. So once you glue those two together, then you can actually open up that part of the hair, and there are some embossed lines that will help you line up the the head and the shoulders, so that you get them in the right place for the hair, so it looks like it's supposed to be sitting where it is. It's again, it's Spellbinders. They're very clever the way that they design these things, and how, as easy as they can, they make these things so that we can put them together without too much hassle. So like I say, there's a little embossed area there where I've put some glue. I put some on the back as well, and then I'm going to just kind of shove her head her head in the hair, and underneath, and then line up those embossed lines on the front, and you'll see suddenly her face will come together. Now you can obviously draw a face on there. It doesn't come with a face. I actually quite like that there isn't a face, because I gotta say that's probably the hardest bit for me with any kind of art, is faces. I struggle with them. So no eyes, no mouth, no nose, it's fine. She's got ears, it's fine. And then what you'll do is, again, you just line up the sort of shoulder bit kind of slots behind the dress, so that it looks like the dress is kind of coming off her shoulder, if that makes sense. So just adding a bit of glue to the bottom part of that head or shoulder area, and then I actually take the dress to the glue, if that makes sense, and then just line it up, and suddenly she's starting to look like a person and not just a bunch of pieces. So you could leave the hat off, you do not need to have the hat. I decided that although it's not a witch's hat, I was still going to go with it, because not all witches wear pointy hats, I'm just saying. So I think it's cute, and I think it's sort of along the witchy line, especially if she's got her green skin and stuff like that. So yeah, so these three little teeny tiny pieces are for the hands. Now these did take me a minute to work out what bit went with what. So one of them, the little like dot of a piece, I'll come back to them in a second, but the dot of a piece of a is like the front of a hand. You'll see that in a second. So for the legs, again, there's like a little embossed line on this leg here, and once you've got some adhesive on there, you can then stick it to the behind the other leg. So to be honest, I didn't quite feel like these lined up the way they should have on here. I feel like they should just slot into place. So I fiddled and faffed with it, and then just put it where I thought it looked best. If you're going to sort of 3D the front, like the main portion of the dress, so that it looks like the legs are underneath the dress, then I would maybe do that bit first, and so that you can just get them lined up much better. But like I say, there's one part of it that it actually looks like a puzzle piece and kind of fits in there, but then it didn't quite work the way that I had them. So I don't know, I may have made a little mistake there, but I made it work. So once I had had decided where I was putting these legs, I'm just going to add some adhesive to the back of the top part of it. You don't need it all the way down, because that's hanging off anyway. And then just lined them up where I thought they looked best, and we're going to go with that. But she does, I've got to say, I like this card. It turned out really cute. So legs are on. Woohoo! Right, so the next bit was the hands. No, the hat. I'm still doing the hat. Right, so the hat also has a slit in it, so that you can then pop it on over her hair, so it looks like the hat is on her head. Again, very clever, very simple thing, but it's so cute. So I'm just doing exactly that, and then I will get that adhered on there. And at this point I needed to work out where I was going to, where she was going to sit, and where those ropes of the swing were going to be. So just popping the hat on so that I knew that I had that in place. And you can kind of finagle it until it's sitting just right. I think I was rocking out to something there. And then for the swing, there's one die, but it cuts out two pieces. So I cut it out twice, and at this point was deciding which way round I wanted this, whether I wanted the black cardstock as kind of like the shadow of the edge of the swing, or whether I wanted the other way around. And I went with the orange on the top, because it's the same color as my rope will be. It's like a burnt orange. And also that top piece has again a little embossed line that shows you where her bottom would sit. So it lines up exactly where, you don't even have to think about it, it shows you where she needs to be sat. So I was just showing you there, it's the curve of her bottom on that die, and it just shows you exactly where it's got to go. So it's really easy. So just popping some adhesive on the right hand side, the left hand side of the curve, so that I can stick her onto the swing. I left the sort of like the far left of the swing, I left that without adhesive, so that, because I didn't know how my my ropes for the swing were going to fit behind there, so I kind of left it like that. I thought I can always add to it if I need to. And I've got a noisy dog. Right, so ignore him. So for the swing, at this point I'm trying to work out where one of her hands has to go, where the string has to go, so it looks like she's holding the string, and also where I'm putting the rest of the, like the bottom of I keep calling it string, the rope, sorry. So got her hand in there, and I again checked the references on the packaging, just to try and work out which hand was which. I think I got it right. Even afterwards I was doubting myself, but I think I actually got it the right way around, so that's fine. So there's one that the second one here looks a little bit like it's got a thumb on it almost, kind of like it's giving it a thumbs up, and that one actually sits on top of the other hand. You sit slightly behind the sleeve of the dress, and again, it just makes so much sense when you put it together. So now that I've got the hands on, almost all of the hand on, I'm going to start with the right hand rope, and I'm just about halfway, so not right on the edge, so it looks like it's in the middle of the swing seat. I'm going to pop that on top of this seat, and then because it is just a thin piece of cardstock, I'm just going to sort of put it behind her hand, so it looks like she's holding the rope. And then I will just add a bit of glue behind, in between those, so that it can just hold it in place. It just makes it easier later on. So that's one rope done. Then we've got to do the other one, which we will do in a second. Not sure where I went there. So for the second one, you're going to go behind the dress and behind her hair, I believe, but you're going to put the rope in front of her hand. So this makes more sense, I think, in a second. It's so that basically it's looking like it's coming from where she's sitting, but it's going over her hand, and then the other little piece, you'll see I've stuck that on top of that, so it looks like she's holding on to the rope of the swing. I hope that makes some sense. So once I've done that, I added some foam adhesive to the back of her, and I'm adding some extra wet adhesive, because we're not only is it going to be stuck to a bumpy area, but we've also inked that embossed area, so I want to make sure it doesn't move, basically. So lining her up roughly where I want her, well, not roughly, but where I want her, and then popping that down and just making sure that I've got everything in place nicely. And then I'm going to also stick down the ends of the rope. So I'm just putting a little line of glue underneath the rope on each of those. And then I will just hold them in place. Get rid of the excess glue, because you don't want too much weeping out of there. It'll dry clear, but it'll just look a bit messy. So once that's done, and it sticks pretty quick, the glue that I use, it's just a tacky glue. I think I got it again off Amazon. I do buy from other places, I promise. And then just trimming the edges of the swing, because we don't want those hanging off. You can fold them at the back of the card, but I thought there's no point. Then for the top sentiment, the Happy Halloween one, I did leave a gap between my foam so that I could, because we've got that bit of cardstock, I didn't want there to be a bumpiness on the sentiment, so leaving that gap of foam means that you just get it, it'll be as level as possible. That's what I'm trying to say. So popping that on somewhat straight and somewhat centered. And this is where you'll see the bottom one has definitely got a smaller gap to put the Haverboolishes Day in. But it's fine. Again, not going to overthink it. It's a Halloween card and I like it. I think it turned out cute. So what I did here was I again just lined up as best I could, same sort of gap between the embossed piece and the sentiment as the top, roughly, and then had her foot hang over the top of the sentiment, which I just thought was a nice added touch. It just kind of, I don't know, I just thought it looked nice. And then some wet adhesive on the back of this, and then this will go on the front of our black card base, like so. And wet adhesive is great because you've got a little bit of time to move that around so that you can actually get it where you want it. So awesome. So the last thing I want to do, I think it's the last thing I want to do, is because I didn't have that headband, or I'd lost it. I did try and look for it in the bin, but you know, I weren't going to go searching for that tiny little piece. So I grabbed some Nouveau drops, and I think I went with a gold in the end, and it actually looks really nice on the purple. Yeah, I went with honey gold. I thought it kind of worked with the brown tone of like the brushed corduroy and the gold on the sentiments, and then I just did a line where the band would be, and that's it. That's all I'm doing. And when it dries, like at the moment, even when you look at it, you'll see it close up, it looks kind of really shiny and glossy. It's not like that when it dries. It dries quite like crystally, because it's like a glitter. So I hope you've enjoyed this, guys. A little bit of shine, something very different for this card small die of the month, but I hope it inspires you to use your dies for other things other than what they are meant for. That's the whole point of having all these lovely things in our stash. So until next time, guys, bye for now.